At my son's baseball game, my dad pointed at my nephew and told everyone, "That's my real grandson." My son heard it and hit a home run without looking at the stands. After the game, I walked past my father and said 5 words. His face went completely blank. My father drove 45 minutes to watch my nephew sit in the stands. My son was the one playing. My father pointed at the kid in the bleachers and called him his real grandson. My son pointed at the left field fence with a line drive that cleared it by 10 feet. One of them needed an audience. The other one became one. After the game, I gave my father 5 words. The words were heavier than the home run. I'm Gavin, 32. My son Briggs is 11 and plays baseball the way some kids play baseball, which is to say, with the specific seriousness of a person who has found the one thing in his life that makes complete sense to him. Briggs doesn't play for fun. I mean, he has fun, but the fun is a byproduct of the competence, not the other way around. He plays because the diamond makes sense. Bases are where they're supposed to be. The ball goes where you hit it. And nobody gets to tell you what you are when you're standing in the batter's box, because the batter's box is the one place in the world where the only thing that matters is whether you can hit the pitch, and Briggs can hit the pitch, and the hitting is the only language he's ever needed to speak, and the language was taught to him by a man who drives a 2006 Silverado and wakes up at 6 a.m. on Saturdays. And that man is not my father. My wife Blair is Latina, Dominican. Her father Harlan came to this country at 19, worked construction for 30 years, and retired to a small house with a backyard where he built a batting cage out of PVC pipe and netting he bought at a surplus store for $140. That batting cage is where Briggs learned to hit. Not from a travel team coach, not from a YouTube tutorial, from his abuelo, in a backyard, on Saturday mornings, starting when Briggs was 9, every single Saturday for 2 years, because Harlan showed up and my father Warren didn't. And showing up is the only credential that matters in a batting cage, and in a childhood, and in a life. Warren, my father, 61, the kind of man who has opinions about everything and attendance at nothing, the kind who will tell you what's wrong with the world from a recliner, but who will not drive 45 minutes to watch his grandson play a sport unless his daughter Taryn is visiting with her son Colton, and the trip can be filed under family outing rather than supporting Briggs. Which is what happened 3 Saturdays ago when Warren came to Briggs's game for the first time in 3 years, and the first time was the last time, and the last time is this story. 3 years, 40 games. Warren attended 0. I'm not estimating. Briggs counted. I found out he was counting in the car after a game last spring, one of the 39 Warren missed, when Briggs said, casual as weather, looking out the window, "Dad, Grandpa's been to 0 games. Abuelo's been to like 30-something. Casual. Factual. The way an 11-year-old reports data he's been collecting without telling anyone he's collecting it. He wasn't complaining. He was informing. And the informing was worse than complaining, because complaining means the child still expects the absence to change, and informing means the child has accepted the absence as a permanent condition, and the acceptance was in Briggs's voice the way humidity is in the air, invisible and everywhere. 40 games. I want to give you the texture of 40 games without Warren because the texture is the story. Game 4, Briggs's first double. I texted Warren a photo. He replied thumbs up. Game 11, Briggs pitched 3 innings of no-hit ball. I called Warren. Voicemail. Game 19, Briggs got hit by a pitch and didn't cry. Walked to first base. Stole second on the next pitch. I didn't call Warren because calling Warren had become the act of reporting accomplishments to a man who receives them the way a spam folder receives emails, technically, without engagement. Game 27, the All-Star selection. Briggs made the team. I told Warren at a family dinner. Warren said, "Good for him," and then asked Taryn about Colton's soccer tournament for the next 15 minutes. Good for him. 2 words. The verbal equivalent of the thumbs-up emoji. The acknowledgement that is technically acknowledgement, but functionally nothing. 40 games. 0 attendance. And the 0 wasn't because Warren was busy or sick or far away. The 0 was because Warren's calendar had space for Colton's soccer, and the space was built by priority, and the priority was built by approval, and the approval was built by blood, and the blood didn't include Blair, and the not including flowed downhill to Briggs. Harlan, meanwhile, has not missed a game since Briggs was 9. Folding chair. Scorebook. The same faded Nationals cap he's worn since 2007. He sits behind the third base dugout and he keeps score in a composition notebook with a mechanical pencil, and he doesn't cheer loud because Harlan doesn't do loud. Harlan does present, and present is louder than any noise Warren has ever made from a recliner 45 minutes away. The batting cages. I need to tell you about the cages because the cages are the home run, and the home run is the story. When Briggs was 9, Warren promised to take him to the batting cages. "This weekend, buddy. You and me." Briggs waited. Warren didn't come. Briggs asked the next week. "Next time, I promise." Next time didn't come. Briggs stopped asking. And the not asking, at 9 years old, meant he'd already learned that asking his grandfather produces promises, and promises produce nothing, and nothing is the thing Warren specializes in when it comes to my son. I need to tell you what Harlan is like because Harlan is the engine of this story, and the engine doesn't make noise. It just runs. Harlan is 64. He speaks in short sentences and long silences, and the silences are where the teaching happens. He doesn't explain the swing. He shows it. He stands in the cage, and he swings, and Briggs watches, and then Briggs swings, and Harlan adjusts one thing. One thing per Saturday. Hands higher. Back hip first. Don't chase the high one. One adjustment. One Saturday. 2 years of one adjustment per week is 104 adjustments, and 104 adjustments is a swing that can clear a little league fence, and the clearing is Harlan's, and every inch of height on that home run is a Saturday morning, and every Saturday morning is a man who promised nothing and showed up for everything, and the showing up is the only coaching certification that matters. Harlan overheard. I don't know when exactly. Blair thinks it was at a Sunday dinner when Briggs said something about wanting to practice his swing. The following Saturday, Harlan pulled into our driveway at 6:30 a.m. in the Silverado. Briggs was still in pajamas. Harlan said, "Get dressed. We're hitting." Briggs looked at me. I nodded. They drove to the batting cages. They went the next Saturday, and the next, and the next, for 2 years. Every Saturday, 6:30 a.m. Harlan and Briggs in a Silverado that smells like coffee and pine, and the specific warmth of a man who decided that a 9-year-old's baseball education was worth more than sleeping in. Briggs's swing is Harlan's. I mean that literally. Open stance. Hands high. Weight loaded on the back hip. The transfer comes from the hips, not the arms. And the transfer is the thing Harlan drilled into him for 2 years because Harlan played semi-pro ball in the Dominican Republic before he came to the States. And the swing he taught Briggs is the swing he used to hit .340 in a league where the pitchers threw gas and the fields had no outfield fences. And the swing traveled from a Dominican diamond in 1987 to a PVC batting cage in 2023 to a left field fence at a Little League game 3 Saturdays ago. And the traveling is the inheritance. And the inheritance is from Harlan. And the inheritance is what my father watched clear the fence without knowing he was watching it. And the not knowing is the 5 words. And the 5 words are coming. The game. Saturday, 2 p.m. Briggs's team versus a team from across the county. I was behind the backstop. Blair was next to me. Harlan was in his folding chair behind third base with the scorebook and the Nationals cap and the mechanical pencil. And then, 20 minutes before first pitch, Warren showed up. With Taryn. And Colton. I hadn't seen Warren at a game since Briggs was 8. 3 years. He walked in with Taryn and Colton and sat in the bleachers on the first base side. And he was wearing a polo shirt like a man attending a corporate event rather than his grandson's baseball game. And the polo shirt was the first sign that he hadn't come for Briggs. He'd come with Taryn, and Briggs happened to be playing. And the happening was incidental to the visit the way a background song is incidental to a restaurant. Technically present, not the reason anyone is there. Third inning. Warren was sitting with a group of parents he didn't know. Colton was next to him. And Warren, in a voice loud enough for the third base line to hear, pointed at Colton and said to the strangers beside him, "That's my real grandson." Said it to strangers. Unprompted. Nobody asked who the kid was. Nobody needed the introduction. Warren volunteered it the way people volunteer information they're proud of. And the volunteering was the pride, and the pride was in Colton, and the pride was said loud enough for the field, and the field had Briggs on it. Briggs was on deck, 15 feet from the bleachers, holding his bat, doing his routine, the one Harlan taught him. 2 practice swings, adjust the helmet, tap the plate twice. He heard it. I know he heard it because his practice swing changed. The third swing was harder. Not looser. Harder. The way a swing gets when the hands are carrying something heavier than a bat. He heard his grandfather point at another kid and call that kid real, and the hearing entered his hands, and his hands tightened, and the tightening was the sentence being absorbed into the swing, and the swing was about to be delivered to a baseball that had done nothing to deserve what was coming. I was behind the backstop, 15 feet the other direction from Briggs. I heard it too. Not the specific words because the bleachers are far enough that words blend into crowd noise, but I heard the tone, the projecting tone of a man performing Pride for Strangers. And I looked at Warren, and Warren was pointing at Colton, and Colton was eating a snow cone and looking at his phone and had no idea he was being displayed, and Briggs was on deck swinging a weighted bat and had no idea he was being erased, and I stood behind the backstop and I gripped the chain link, and I didn't say anything because the saying was for later, and later was the parking lot, and the parking lot was 5 words, and the 5 words were coming, and the coming was the patience, and the patience was expensive, and the cost was watching my son absorb a sentence he shouldn't have had to hear while holding a bat he was about to use to answer it. Bottom of the 4th. 2 outs. Runner on second. Briggs stepped into the box. Open stance. Hands high. Weight on the back hip. Harlan's swing. The first pitch was a fastball, belt high, the kind of pitch Harlan spent 2 years teaching Briggs to wait for, because belt-high fastballs are the pitches that leave the yard, and leaving the yard was what Harlan taught him to do, and leaving the yard is what Briggs did. The crack of the bat was the loudest sound at the field. The ball left on a line, rising, over the left fielder who didn't bother turning around because the ball was already past him, over the fence, into the parking lot, and the parking lot received the ball the way the parking lot receives everything, without commentary, and the ball landed somewhere between a minivan and a truck, and the landing was the end of the at-bat and the beginning of everything else. Briggs rounded the bases. He didn't look at the stands. Not once. Not at Warren. Not at Taryn. Not at Colton. He rounded first. Rounded second. Rounded third. Crossed home plate. And he looked at me. Through the backstop. I was standing with my hands on the fence. He looked at me, and I nodded, and the nod was the only audience he needed, and the nod was the only language we have for moments like this, which are moments where a son does something extraordinary and a father confirms it without words because words would be smaller than the thing that just happened. He dropped the bat at home plate. Didn't flip it. Didn't celebrate. Dropped it the way you drop something heavy when you're done carrying it. The sentence he heard in the 3rd inning was the weight. The bat was the tool. The home run was the answer. And the dropping was the release. He walked to the dugout. Teammates high-fived him. He accepted them quietly. Sat on the bench. Looked at Harlan behind third base. Harlan tipped his cap. 1 tip. The same cap. The same man. The same Saturday mornings. The same 6:30 a.m. The same PVC cage. The same swing that just cleared a fence. The tip was everything. 2 years of Saturdays in 1 tip. 104 mornings in 1 gesture. The cap tip is Harlan's version of a standing ovation. It means, I saw what you did. I know where it came from. And I know you know. The tip was for Briggs, and the tip was between them. And the between was built in a batting cage. And the building is the relationship. And the relationship doesn't need bleachers or polo shirts or the word real to function. It needs a folding chair and a mechanical pencil and a man who keeps score, because keeping score is what you do when you care enough to document. And documenting is what Harlan does. And the documentation is in a composition notebook that has every game Briggs has ever played. Recorded in handwriting that is small and careful and consistent. The way Harlan does everything, which is, without announcement, without fail, and without expecting anything in return except the privilege of watching his grandson hit baseballs. After the game, parking lot, Warren approached me, smiling. The smile of a man who thinks the home run was a family moment he's entitled to share because he was physically present when it happened, as if presence without investment earns celebration, as if 45 minutes of driving cancels 3 years of absence. Hell of a hit, he said. 2 hands out like he was going to hug me or shake my hand or do whatever men do when they want to claim proximity to something impressive their grandson did despite contributing nothing to the impressiveness. I looked at him. And I said 5 words. He got that from her. Her. Blair. Meaning. Harlan. Meaning. The Dominican grandpa in the folding chair with the scorebook. Meaning. The batting cages at 6:30 a.m. Meaning. The open stance and the high hands and the weight transfer from the back hip. Meaning. Every Saturday you didn't show up was a Saturday someone else did. Meaning, the talent you just watched was built by the family you rejected. Meaning, the home run is not yours. The home run is Harlan's. 5 words. No explanation. No argument. Just 5 words that credited the family Warren has spent 12 years diminishing and reduced Warren to what he has been at every game for 3 years, which is absent. Warren's face went blank. Not angry. Not offended. Blank. The specific blank of a man who has just been told something that is true and that he has no prepared response for because the truth was unexpected and the unexpected requires processing and the processing produced nothing because there is nothing to process that doesn't lead to the same conclusion, which is that the 5 words are correct and the correctness is the thing he can't argue with. The blank was a loading screen. The loading screen produced no result. I didn't wait for the result. I turned around, walked to the car. Blair was already in the passenger seat. Briggs was in the back. I got in, closed the door, and the closing was the period at the end of the sentence, and the sentence was 5 words long, and the period was a car door in a parking lot, and the parking lot is where the conversation ended. I thought about going back. After I closed the door, after Blair put her hand on my leg, after Briggs clicked his seatbelt in the back, I thought about walking back to Warren and saying more, explaining more, giving him the 3 years of context and the 40 games of absence and the batting cages and the 6:30 a.m. Saturdays and the open stance that came from a Dominican semi-pro player who built a cage out of PVC in his backyard because his son-in-law's father couldn't be bothered to keep a promise to a 9-year-old. I thought about giving Warren the full picture, but the full picture is not what Warren earned. Warren earned 5 words. 5 words for 40 games. 5 words for 3 years. 5 words for a man who pointed at someone else's kid at my son's game and called that kid real while my son, the real one, the one with the swing and the stance and the Saturday mornings, stood 15 feet away holding a bat. 5 words is the exchange rate, and the exchange rate is final. The car ride. Briggs in the back seat. Quiet for 4 blocks. Then, Dad. He came to 1 game, and he still wasn't watching me. Calm. Factual. The report of an 11-year-old who has been processing absence for 3 years and who doesn't cry about it anymore because crying is for surprises and Warren's absence stopped being surprising 2 years ago. He came to 1 game. 40 games, 1 attendance, and the 1 attendance was spent pointing at another kid and calling that kid real while the kid who plays, the kid who practices, the kid who hits home runs, held a bat 15 feet away and heard every word. Then Briggs said something that I have not been able to stop thinking about since he said it. He looked out the window, the way he looks when he's thinking, and he said, "Is it because of Mom?" For words. 11 years old. He has solved the equation. He has been sitting in the passenger seats and the dugouts and the batting cages of his life for 3 years doing the math that adults do with therapy and wine, and he did it with a question in the back seat of a Honda at 5 p.m. on a Saturday after hitting a home run that his grandfather missed, because his grandfather was pointing at someone else. Is it because of Mom? The question that contains the answer. Because yes, it's because of Mom. It's always been because of Mom. Blair and I got married 12 years ago. Warren came to the wedding. He came because not coming would have been a statement, and Warren is a man who makes statements through subtext, not absence. He gave a toast. The toast was 30 seconds. He said, "To my son Graham," hoping he finds his way back. Finds his way back. To what? To whom? The toast was a coded message delivered at a wedding reception in front of 80 people, and the code was, "You married wrong, and I'm putting it in a champagne glass and calling it a blessing." Blair heard it. I heard it. Nobody else heard it because nobody else was listening for the knife inside the butter. The grandchildren are the proxy war. Colton is Taryn's son. Taryn married a man Warren approved of. Colton is the approved grandson. Briggs is the son of the woman Warren didn't approve of. Briggs is the unapproved grandson. The approval flows from wife to child the way water flows downhill, automatically, without effort, and in one direction. Warren treats Colton like a grandson. Warren treats Briggs like evidence of a marriage he didn't endorse. Real grandson isn't about biology. It's about Blair. And it's always been about Blair. And Briggs, at 11, figured that out in the back seat of a car after a home run and stated it as a forward question that I couldn't answer without lying or breaking him. So I said, "Mom is the best thing that ever happened to our family. Abuelo knows it. I know it. And you know it because your swing proves it every Saturday. He nodded, and the nod was enough. And the enough was Harlan's, not Warren's. What I didn't say to Briggs, what I will never say to Briggs, is that yes, it's because of Mom. And it's been because of Mom since the toast at the wedding and before the toast at the wedding, and the before is the part one don't have evidence for, but the evidence I do have is 12 years of a man treating his grandson like a downgrade because the grandson's mother is the woman Warren didn't choose for me, and the not choosing has been extended to a child who had no say in any of it, who was born into a family system that classified him before he drew his first breath, and the classification was lesser, and the lesser was enforced in attendance and gifts and attention, and a word at a baseball game that my son heard, and that my son processed, and that my son answered with a swing that came from the side of the family Warren has been diminishing for 12 years, and the answering is the most beautiful irony of this story. The talent Warren watched clear the fence was built by the people. Warren rejected, and the rejection built nothing, and the people built everything, and the everything is on a shelf in Briggs's room, and in a batting cage in Harlan's backyard, and in a Silverado at 6:30 a.m. every Saturday morning, and in a swing that starts at the back hip and ends over the fence, and the ending is from her. I pulled over. Not because I needed to. Because I needed to look at Briggs. I turned around. He was looking at me. Not crying. Not angry. Just looking. The way an 11-year-old looks at his father when the father is the one person who hasn't lied to him, and the looking is the check, the verification, the confirmation that at least this one adult is what he says he is. I said, "That home run was the best thing I've ever seen." He said, "Abuelo's been working on my back hip for like a month." It finally clicked. He was smiling. The smile of a kid who hit a home run and who, in the car, chose to talk about the swing instead of the grandfather, and the choosing was the wisdom, and the wisdom was 11 years old. Darlene called that night. My mother. Warren had gone home and told her what I said. Darlene's position. You embarrassed him in front of the other parents. Embarrassed. Him. The man who pointed at someone else's kid at my son's game and called that kid real. I embarrassed him. I said, he embarrassed himself, Darlene. I just named it. She was quiet. The quiet of a woman who has been managing her husband's behavior for 40 years by reframing it as other people's overreaction, and the reframing has always worked because the other people have always absorbed it, and the absorbing just stopped in a parking lot with 5 words. Taryn called the next day. Colton is Dad's biological grandson, Gavin. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. The blood hierarchy stated as taxonomy. As if DNA is a scoring system. As if chromosomes determine who gets called real at a baseball game. I said, Briggs hit a home run. Colton watched from the stands. Biology didn't swing the bat. A man with a batting cage in his backyard did. Taryn hung up. The hanging up was the first honest thing she'd done in the conversation because the hanging up meant she had no counter, and no counter is the sound the truth makes when it lands in a room that was built for lies. Rhett, my best friend since college. I told him the story over beers at his kitchen table the following week. Told him about the real grandson comment, the home run, the 5 words, the blank face, the car ride, the is it because of Mom. Rhett listened. Rhett is a listener the way some people are runners. It's what he does, it's how he processes, and the processing is silent, and the silence is helpful. When I finished, he said, the kid heard his grandfather erase him, and his response was to hit a baseball over a fence. That's not anger. That's a thesis statement. Rhett teaches English. He would call a home run a thesis statement. He's right. The thesis was, I exist. The evidence was a baseball in a parking lot. And the committee that approved the thesis was a man in a folding chair with a Nationals cap and a mechanical pencil who didn't need to say a word because the scorebook said everything. Rhett said one more thing that night. 3rd beer. He said, you know what Warren's going to have to live with? Not the 5 words. The 5 words will fade. What Warren has to live with is the game ball. Because the game ball is on Briggs's shelf, and the shelf is in Briggs's room, and the room is in your house. And the house is where Harlan pulls up every Saturday at 6:30, and the pulling up is the thing Warren never did. Warren's not being punished by you, Gavin. He's being replaced by a man in a Silverado who didn't need to be asked twice. Rhett teaches English, but sometimes he talks like a closing argument, and the closing argument was correct. Warren isn't being punished. Warren is being outperformed by a man who built a batting cage for $140 and who shows up with hot chocolate. and who calls a mechanical pencil a scorekeeping tool, and who taught an 11-year-old to transfer his weight from his back hip through the zone. And the zone is the space between the pitcher's hand and the catcher's glove. And the zone is where Briggs lives now, and the living is Harlan's gift, and the gift was never asked for, and the never asking is what makes it real, and real is the word Warren used for the wrong kid. Last Saturday, Briggs's next game. Harlan in his folding chair behind third base. Scorebook open. Nationals cap. Mechanical pencil. Same spot. Same man. Warren was not there. Warren has not been there for 41 games. The number is 41 now because another week happened, and another game happened, and another folding chair was set up by the man who shows up, and another game was played in the absence of the man who doesn't. And the absence is the thing that's present at every game, sitting in the empty bleacher space where a grandfather could be. And the empty space doesn't keep score, and the empty space doesn't tip its cap, and the empty space doesn't drive a Silverado to a batting cage at 6:30 a.m., and the empty space is Warren's contribution to Briggs's baseball career, which is nothing, and nothing is what you get when you point at someone else's kid and call him real. The game ball from the home run is on Briggs's shelf. In his room. In our house. Not in Warren's den. Not on a mantle seeking validation from a man who gives it to other children. On a shelf, in a room, in a house where showing up happens daily, and the daily is the only kind that matters. Briggs put it there himself. Didn't ask where it should go. Knew. The way kids know where things belong because kids have a compass that adults lose somewhere between the first compromise and the last excuse. The ball is on the shelf. Real doesn't need a grandfather's permission to exist. Real is on the shelf. Real hit the ball. Real rounded the bases without looking at the stands. Real is 11, and Real has a swing that came from a backyard batting cage, and a man named Harlan, and a Saturday morning routine that has not been broken in 2 years, and will not be broken next Saturday or the Saturday after because Harlan doesn't break routines, and routines don't break kids, and kids who aren't broken hit home runs, and home runs don't need permission to clear the fence. Saturday morning, 6:30 a.m. Harlan's Silverado pulls into the driveway. Same truck. Same time. Same man. Briggs is already dressed. Bat bag on his shoulder. Glove on his hand. He runs to the truck the way he's run to it for 2 years, with the specific energy of an 11-year-old who knows exactly where he's going, and exactly who's taking him, and exactly what they're going to do when they get there. He climbs in. Harlan hands him a coffee, which is actually hot chocolate because Briggs is 11 and Harlan has been making the same joke for 2 years about, "Your coffee, sir," and Briggs laughs every time because the joke isn't funny and the not funny is the point. The not funny is the love. And the love is in a Silverado at 6:30 a.m. on a Saturday, heading to a batting cage made of PVC and netting, and the cage cost $140, and the cage built a swing, and the swing built a home run, and the home run cleared a fence, and the fence was the limit, and the limit was passed, and the passing is the whole story. I stand in the driveway and watch the truck pull away, and the pulling away is the sound of a Saturday morning, and the sound is Harlan's engine and Briggs's laugh, and the two of them heading to a cage where the pitching machine throws belt-high fastballs, and Briggs loads his weight on the back hip and transfers through the zone, and the transfer is Harlan's, and the zone is Harlan's, and the Saturday is Harlan's, and my son is in that truck, and my son is real, and the real was never Warren's to give. And the real was never Warren's to take, and the real is in a Silverado turning left at the end of the street, and the real is mine, and the real is Blair's, and the real is Harlan's, and the real is Briggs's, and the real doesn't need a grandfather in a polo shirt to point at it from the stands because the real points at itself, over the fence, into the parking lot, and the parking lot holds the ball, and the ball holds the proof, and the proof is the swing, and the swing is from her. If you've ever watched your kid proof something without saying a word, you know what this feels like. Subscribe if you want more. Drop your story in the comments. We'll see you next Saturday.